What's up, Dragon Brood? So we're continuing on this train of putting out multiple deck lists a day leading up to Zendikar Rising, and this one's only slightly different than another one we put up recently. We did put up Selesnya counters, I believe, 2 days ago now. I'm getting the days confused. Between putting out so many deck lists and COVID being a thing, this isolation stuff while we're putting down decks is really getting the days confused. What I do know, though, is coming up on Wednesday during the Streamer Early Access event, y'all can stop by the stream and watch me play just about all day if you want to see all these different decks I've been putting up in action. So thank you to Wizard of the Coast for inviting me to play in that. And you can get the link to my Twitch chat down below, or just rewind the video because I put it in the little title bar every single time. So, this deck, we're talking about Abzan Counters. And this is going to look very similar to the Selesnya counters, but we're playing a couple of different cards, and we can talk about those as we progress through this video. But before we do that, remember to like this video, please, to help us get in front of more people. Hit the subscribe button to help me out, and then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I have a new video up, just to make sure you don't miss anything. Now, let's go take a look at this Abzan counters list. Now, I will say I've seen 3 or 4 other people's lists, and it seems like we're all pretty much within like 4 to 7 cards of playing the same list. So what this tells me is most people are starting in the same place for Abzan counters. And it means probably by adding the black, you're actually losing some of the flexibility you get to play in the Selesnya list. Now, there may also be a Golgari list you could play, but that means you lose stuff like the Conclave Mentor and things like that that are pretty good to this list, and you probably don't want to give that up. So I will tell you going in, if I have a preference, it's probably the Selesnya counters list. You're also going to have cleaner mana, but if you just want to play the new cards and try something different, then, you know, let's go down this road. Anyway, let's get to the deck list. So we're playing 4 Stonecoil Serpent. Y'all know the card by now. It's easy to use. You can play it on every drop, and it gets counters. Also has reach and trample, so it's got a lot of stuff going on for what it's trying to do. We're playing 4 Swarm Shambler. If you're playing any type of +1/+1 counter deck, this is like the ubiquitous 1 mana thing. If either of these decks are popular, or even the mono green +1/+1 counters list, which is weird that that's a thing, gets popular, this could be a very valuable rare. So if you're thinking about picking up some rares and you want to sort of gamble on value, this is one I might pick up if you have some store credit somewhere, and if they don't go anywhere, great. You have like a $1.50, $2 rare. But if they do, this could easily be a $5 rare. So just something to think about. Same thing here on this Inscription of Abundance. I think pretty much every green list I have that has any reasonable number of creatures is probably going to end up playing this card. I can't see how I'm going to get away from it at this point. It's very, very good. Being able to pump your creatures by putting counters on them, or being able to fight something, or being able to gain life. And you can do all of that at instant speed, and for 5 mana you can do all 3. So it's very hard to turn that down. We're playing Luminarch Aspirant. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite 2 mana cards out of Zendikar Rising, mostly because it fits a lot of different decks. It's a human, if you just need to play that theme. It's a cleric, which fits the different party mechanics. And then in this deck, it puts +1/+1s on things, which works with everything else you have. So all around, quite a good card. And then, of course, we're playing 4 Conclave Mentor. This is the card that every time you put a counter on, you're going to get an extra counter. And you can't really turn that down. It's just too good. This is what I'm saying. I don't think you can get away from the white portion of the deck. Like, maybe you could play an Orzhov +1/+1 counters, but even then you still lose the green that would let you play the Conclave Mentor. So I think you really can't get around it, but we'll see. Now we're playing 4 of the Oran Reef Ooze. This card also is very good on its own. One of the things I pointed out in a previous video that I wanted to remind everybody of is you can put a counter on this card so it comes into play as a 3/3. Then when you go to attack, it's a 4/4. So you're basically attacking with a 4/4 for 3 mana, which is pretty strong. Now, if you attack with other things that have counters, those all get a boost, and that's great. And that's the main reason you want it in the list. But if for some reason they swipe the board, and this is the one thing in your hand, you can grow a creature attacking by itself. So don't forget about that. Now, this is the card I believe everybody wants to see in action. The Grakmaw Skyclave Ravager. And honestly, I don't know if this is good enough to play black. I think it's fine. Don't get me wrong. I think the card is good. But again, I'm coming back to the flexibility of having better mana and having more cards you get access to, playing green-white. But the card is pretty solid, so I'm not going to turn my nose up at it. It's a 3 mana, effectively 3/3, because it comes into play with 3+1/+1 counters. When you have a creature die that has a +1/+1, it also gains counters. And when it dies itself, it puts an XX creature into play equal to the number of +1/+1 counters it had. Most of the time in this deck, it's basically going to be just equal to its power. That's a lot of words for a 3 mana creature. And the worst case scenario, it dies, you get a 3/3 plus. So they have to kind of kill it twice unless they exile it. And that's pretty nice. So I'm digging this card. I think it's very good. But again, we're just talking about mana issues. We're playing one Agadeem's Awakening. It does come into play untapped if you just need that extra black source. But you can actually get multiple creatures out with this because we're playing several different casting costs. So they give you a chance to rebuild your board. And you can get a whole plethora of things that care about +1/+1 counters and benefit each other. We're playing one Basri Ket. Again, it puts +1/+1s on things. It can make more tokens. But ultimately, you may get into some board stalls. I can see that based on a lot of decks other people are building. And I wanted to at least leave this in here for the option of being able to go ultimate effectively. It's not often you get to do it, but it might actually happen in this deck quite a bit because you're benefited by just putting the +1/+1 on every turn. We're going to be playing 2 Nissa of Shadowed Boughs, which is kind of a creepy name, but 4 mana, 4 loyalty, and whenever you landfall, you get to put loyalty on her. Most of the time, you're going to be using it to just make a 3/3 creature and be able to fight with it. But the reality is, you will very likely be able to get creatures back from the yard. And I have to admit, getting back Grakmaw multiple turns is kind of cool. Because then you're getting a creature that if they do happen to kill it to try to come after Nissa and attack, you're actually leaving a blocker behind. So that's pretty good too. There's a lot happening with this card. And now, is Nissa the perfect card for this deck? I don't know. I've played 0 games with the card. Most people haven't either. So we'll find out pretty quickly in the first couple of weeks. We're playing 2 Polakranos because this comes into play with counters on it. For 4 mana, you get a 6/6, and it acts as a removal card. That's kind of the biggest thing here. Because we're playing multiple colors, if we can get our creatures to also be removal, that's always a benefit. And then if for some reason we get it out of the graveyard, it comes in as a 12/12, which is also super spectacular. We're playing 3 Basri's Lieutenant. I was going to try to squeeze more in here, but I felt like between stuff like Polakranos being able to come back and Grakmaw being able to leave behind tokens, you kind of already have some different modes of sweeper protection, so I didn't want to gum up the deck with too many high casting cost spells that would keep us from having our early game action. But cards all around good. Don't sleep on this card. Getting a +1/+1 on something, being able to get tokens whenever you strategically chump block or get your board swept, all very good things here. Playing 1 Felidar Retreat. For those of you that listen to my podcast, you'll know that this is one of the cards I picked as the most interesting in the set. It does let you get more counters on everything every time you play a land. But if you don't have anything out, you can just make cats. And that's a reasonable thing to do. So you can be gumming up the board, making more creatures so you can punch through, or just making your team supremely large. And again, when you have something like Grakmaw, well, then that's going to make sure that you get a bigger creature back. Or when you have Basri's Lieutenant, then everything's going to be able to make a token if it dies. Or if you have the Orin Refus, whenever it goes to attack, all of the things now have counters, so they're all going to get bigger. So there's just more and more things that this card works with in the deck. Honestly, if we weren't already playing like Basri's Lieutenant, Polakranos, Nissa, I probably would consider playing up to 3 copies. But I think we're in a situation where you just can't have that many 4 mana plus things in the deck. And then we're playing the Amaria's Call and the Turn Timber Symbiosis, just as extra ways to get untapped lands into play if we need them. But occasionally we will use those abilities, and it's good to have late game cards that also happen to function as lands. Now, actual lands, we have 20. So if you come back and combine them with our 1, 2, 3, 4 other cards, we do have 24 lands. So we're not really skimping on land at all. And they do all come into play untapped if we absolutely need them. But we did get the benefit of having a pathway that's green and white. We do get the benefit of a pathway that's white and black. And then we have the Endotha Triome, which gives us green, black, and white mana. So we are in a pretty good spot here. Not much to really worry about as far as that goes. We're playing 2 forests, 2 plains, 1 swamp, and then we're playing 3 Fabled Passage. So getting 2 black mana should not be an issue. The only real concern would be if you get the slow draws that have like Fabled Passages alongside Into the Triomes. That could gum up the works a little bit. But outside of that, the mana should be mostly solid for this 3 color list. Now, again, is adding black to have Abzan better than having the Selesnya deck? I personally do not believe so. I'm willing to be proven wrong, and I'll probably play both at some point just to test it out. But I think just not having the risk of the mana issues, plus being able to be more flexible in the cards you can play, really make a big difference. And I think that shows, like I said, when you look at the different deck lists people are making for Abzan counters, they're all very similar. I mean, we're each experimenting with a handful of cards, but the lists are kind of set in stone for the cards you get to play. Whereas when you see something for Selesnya counters, there's definitely some flexibility and that opens up things a little bit. The only thing I would say is maybe when we get to talking about sideboarding and best of 3, having access to black could make things a little bit better for you, but I'm not sure there's much that black's going to bring to the table that currently green and white couldn't handle for you anyway. But maybe it's a personal preference. Maybe you're excited about this deck more than I am. Feel free to discuss it in the comments and tell me all about it and how you feel, because I can easily be convinced. And don't forget that Wednesday we'll be playing practically all day in the Streamer Early Access event. Again, thanks to Wizards of the Coast for the invitation. And if you want to check me out, my link to my Twitch channel will be in the description as always, as will this deck list. And you can check out my new merchandise. That's such an exciting thing. So yeah, if you want to support me on either of my channels, feel free to go to the link in the description, hit up my merchandise, and yeah, every little bit helps a lot, and y'all can just get some sweet merch to help rep the channel, or just support me, either way. But don't forget, if you haven't, please hit the like button to help us get in front of more people so people can see the video. And hit the subscribe button just to help me out. And then hit that notification bell so you get notified every single time I have a new video up. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.